The poor maid ran from the mansion, screaming for help, fleeing her abusive boss. Suddenly, 30 motorcycles stopped around her. What they did shocked the city. Blood trickled from her bare feet onto the scorching asphalt of Route 66. Maya's torn uniform fluttered in the desert wind as she staggered forward, her lungs begging for air. She couldn't breathe. Behind her, somewhere in the darkness, Richard Lawson was making calls. To his lawyers, to the police, weaving a web of lies that would land her. In prison before dawn, she had been running for 20 minutes when she heard it. The deep, guttural roar of motorcycle engines, not just one or two, dozens. The sound grew louder, closer, until the highway itself seemed to vibrate beneath her bleeding feet. Maya turned, and her heart stopped. Headlights, 30 of them, maybe more, cutting through the night like predators closing in on prey. The motorcycles surrounded her in seconds, forming a perfect circle. The engines roared. Leather-clad motorcyclists stared at her. That was it. She had escaped one monster only to run into an army of them, or at least that's what she thought. What those bikers did next would shock an entire city. Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It's amazing to see how far my voice can reach. 3 hours earlier, Maya Rodriguez had been on her knees scrubbing marble floors in the Lawson Mansion, a sprawling estate in Paradise Valley, Arizona that screamed wealth and privilege. The house sat on 5 acres of manicured desert landscape, complete with infinity pools, tennis courts, and security cameras monitoring every corner. Maya had worked there for 8 months, arriving at dawn and leaving after dark, invisible to the wealthy family who employed her. She was 26 years old, sending most of her paycheck back to her mother in Tucson, living in a studio apartment she could barely afford, and telling herself things would get better. They were about to get much worse. Richard Lawson was a name that commanded respect in Phoenix. Tech entrepreneur, philanthropist. His face smiled from the society pages of Arizona magazines, always photographed at charity galas with his picture-perfect wife, Amanda. What those photos didn't show was the way his eyes followed Maya through the house, the way he manufactured reasons to be alone with her, the increasingly inappropriate comments that made her skin crawl. Maya had learned to disappear into her work, to make herself small and quiet, hoping he'd lose interest. Today, he didn't. Amanda Lawson was at her weekly spa appointment. Every Tuesday from 2 to 5, like clockwork. The other housekeeper, Carmen, had called in sick. Maya was alone in the house with Richard, and she knew it was a mistake the moment she heard his footsteps on the marble stairs. He descended slowly, deliberately, his expensive Italian shoes clicking with each step. Maya kept her eyes on the floor she was scrubbing, her heart hammering against her ribs. Please walk past. Please just walk past. Before we continue, if this story is grabbing your attention, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life tales. What happens next will leave you speechless. He stopped 3 feet away. Maya could smell his cologne, something that probably cost more than she made in a month. "You work so hard, Maya," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Always on your knees. Always scrubbing. Don't you ever want more from life?" She didn't answer, didn't look up. Her hands trembled as she wrung out the cleaning rag. "I asked you a question." His tone had changed, gone cold. Maya forced herself to meet his eyes, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. This wasn't going to end well. "Mr. Lawson, I need to finish the floors before—" His hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. The bucket of soapy water tipped, splashing across the pristine marble. Maya tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Let go of me!" Her voice came out high and panicked. Richard's face twisted with rage. "Stupid girl, look what you've done. You've ruined everything." But they both knew he wasn't talking about the spilled water. What happened next would replay in Maya's nightmares for months. His other hand tangled in her hair, yanking her head back. She screamed, the sound echoing through the cavernous foyer. His weight pressed down on her, forcing her against the wet floor. The fabric of her uniform tore. Maya's hand scrambled across the marble, finding the metal bucket handle. She swung it blindly, felt it connect with something solid. Richard roared in pain and fury, his grip loosening just enough. She didn't think. She just ran. Through the kitchen with its gleaming appliances and marble countertops, past the wine cellar where bottles worth thousands gathered dust, out the service entrance that staff used to stay invisible. Her feet hit the driveway, loose gravel cutting into the thin canvas of her work shoes. Behind her, she could hear Richard shouting into his phone, his voice carrying through the open door. He was calling someone, spinning a story, turning victim into villain with the ease of someone who'd never been held accountable for anything in his privileged life. The estate's iron gate was closing, its automatic sensor triggered by Richard's command. Maya ran faster than she'd ever run in her life, throwing herself through the narrowing gap. The gate's edge caught her uniform, tearing a long gash down the side and scraping her shoulder raw. She hit the pavement outside the estate and kept running. The exclusive neighborhood was dead silent. No pedestrians, no buses, no witnesses. Just rows of mansions hiding behind walls and gates, each one a fortress of wealth and secrets. Her cheap shoes disintegrated within 10 minutes. The Arizona heat had baked the pavement all day, and now, even in the evening, it burned against her bare feet. Maya ran through the pain, through the burning in her lungs, through the terror that threatened to freeze her in place. She had no phone. Richard made them leave personal belongings in their lockers. She had no wallet, no ID, nothing but her torn uniform and the knowledge that a powerful man was coming after her, with lies that everyone would believe. The suburban streets eventually gave way to a highway, Route 66, the historic route that still cut through the Valley of the Sun. Cars rushed past, their occupants, safe in their air-conditioned bubbles, completely oblivious to the desperate woman on the shoulder. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and red. Maya's feet left bloody prints on the asphalt. Her throat was raw from screaming and running. In the distance, she heard sirens. He'd actually done it. Richard Lawson had called the police on her. Terror gave her a second wind. She pushed forward, stumbling more than running now, her vision blurring with tears and exhaustion. That's when the sound hit her. A deep, mechanical rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Maya turned, and her remaining hope shattered. Motorcycles. Not just a few, a massive formation of them, riding down the highway like something out of a nightmare. 30 bikes, maybe more, their headlights creating a wall of blinding light. As they got closer, she could make out leather vests, bandanas, beards. Her exhausted mind filled in the blanks with every scary story she'd ever heard about biker gangs. The bikes began to slow, to circle. Maya stood frozen in the center of the highway's shoulder as they surrounded her, their engines creating a deafening wall of sound. She was trapped. After everything, the assault, the escape, the run through hell, she was going to die on this highway, and no one would ever know the truth. The lead bike pulled up closest to her, a massive machine that gleamed even in the fading light. The rider was enormous, his weathered face framed by a salt and pepper beard, his muscular arms covered in tattoos that looked like they told stories of violence. He cut his engine, removed his sunglasses, and Maya saw something she didn't expect. Kindness in his eyes. Deep, weathered kindness that came from seeing too much pain in the world and refusing to add to it. He looked at her torn uniform, her bleeding feet, the bruises already forming on her wrists and neck. His jaw clenched tight. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly gentle, cutting through the sound of the other idling engines. "Ma'am, my name is Jake Hawkins. We're going to help you. But first, I need you to tell me who did this to you." Maya's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the highway shoulder, surrounded by 30 bikers and the approaching wail of police sirens. Through her tears, she choked out 2 words that would change everything. Richard Lawson. The effect was immediate. She heard gasps, curses, the sound of bikes revving with sudden anger. Jake's expression hardened into something fierce and protective. "Boys," he called out to his crew, "we've got a situation, and it's about to get real interesting. If you're already on Maya's side and want to see how far this goes, leave a like so I know you're here with me." Jake Hawkins dismounted his Harley with the practiced ease of someone who'd been riding for decades. He kept a respectful distance from Maya, probably reading the panic still coursing through her. Around them, the other riders killed their engines one by one, and in the sudden quiet, Maya could hear her own ragged breathing. "Don't be scared of us," Jake said, holding his hands up in a peaceful gesture. "See this patch?" He pointed to his leather vest, where a phoenix rose from flames above the words Phoenix Rising MC. "We're not what you think. I'm a retired Phoenix PD detective. 23 years on the force before I took a bullet, and they decided I was done. Now, I do this." A female rider stepped forward, younger than Jake, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and an angel wing tattoo visible on her neck. Her vest read, "Sky." She held out a water bottle. "Small sips, honey. You're in shock." Her voice carried a soft Texas drawl that somehow made Maya feel safer. As Maya drank, she noticed details she'd missed in her panic. Several of the riders had medical patches on their vests. One had paramedic stitched below his club name. Another had military insignia. These weren't the gang members her terrified mind had conjured. These were something else entirely. "Richard Lawson," Jake repeated, and Maya saw recognition flash across his face, and something darker. Rage. Carefully controlled. "The tech guy. Lives in that fancy Paradise Valley development." He looked at the other riders. "We all know his type. Money, power, thinks the rules don't apply to him." He turned back to Maya. "What did he do?" Maya's voice shook as she told them. The months of harassment, today's attack, the torn uniform, the escape. She told them about the phone call she'd heard, how Richard was already crafting his narrative, how he'd use his influence to make her the criminal. The sirens were getting closer, red and blue lights flickering in the distance. Maya felt her panic rising again. "He'll say I stole something or hurt him. He has lawyers, connections, and we have something better," Jake interrupted. He pulled out his phone, held it up, and started recording. His voice became official, authoritative. "This is Jake Hawkins, retired Phoenix PD detective, badge number 4729. The date is March 22nd. Time is 7:47 p.m. Location, Route 66, approximately 2 miles west of Tatum Boulevard. We've encountered a woman in severe distress. She has visible injuries consistent with assault, torn clothing, defensive wounds on her wrists, bleeding feet, signs of strangulation on her neck. She reports fleeing from an assault by Richard Lawson of Paradise Valley. Requesting immediate response from victim, services, female officer, and a supervisor." He ended the recording and sent it. "That's going to every contact I still have in the department, and trust me, I have a lot of contacts." 3 police cars pulled up, and Maya watched Jake's entire demeanor shift. He moved to intercept the officers before they could approach her, and she heard him talking in low, urgent tones. One of the officers, a woman with sergeant stripes, broke into a smile when she recognized him. "Hawkins, what are you doing? Out here with the whole damn club?" Her tone was friendly, familiar. "Sarge," Jake's voice carried back to where Maya sat. "We've got a sexual assault victim. Perpetrator is Richard Lawson. He's likely already called in a false report about theft or assault. I need you to see her injuries first, get her statement documented before anyone from the Lawson camp starts their spin campaign." Sergeant Maria Santos approached Maya with professional concern, mixed with genuine warmth. "Ms. Rodriguez, Maya Rodriguez. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Sergeant Santos. I've known Jake Hawkins for 15 years. If he says you need help, then you're getting help. But I need you to tell me what happened. Can you do that?" For the next hour, as darkness fell completely over the Arizona desert, Maya told her story again. This time it was official, recorded, documented. One of the paramedics, a woman named Casey who rode with the Phoenix Rising MC on weekends, photographed Maya's injuries with clinical Precision while explaining what she was documenting and why. Maya's phone started ringing. She'd forgotten it was still in the pocket of her torn uniform. The number showed Lawson Residence. Sergeant Santos looked at the screen and made a decision. Don't answer. She took the phone and put it on speaker for everyone to hear. Richard Lawson's voice, smooth and controlled, filled the night air. Officer, I'm calling to report a serious crime. My housekeeper, Maya Rodriguez, attacked me this afternoon when I discovered her stealing valuable items from my home. I have injuries and witnesses. I demand that she be arrested immediately. The silence that followed was electric. Then Sergeant Santos spoke, her voice professional but with an edge of satisfaction. Mr. Lawson, this is Sergeant Maria Santos, badge number 8756, Scottsdale Police Department. I'm currently with Ms. Rodriguez, who has reported that you sexually assaulted her earlier today. She has extensive injuries that have been photographed and documented by medical personnel. I'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow at 9 a.m. to give your statement. Do not attempt to contact the victim. Do not leave the state. Do you understand? The phone went dead. Richard Lawson had hung up. Oh, he wasn't expecting that, Jake said with grim satisfaction. Around him, the other riders made sounds of agreement. Thought he could just make one call and have you arrested before you could tell anyone the truth. That's how guys like him operate. They count on victims being alone, scared, without resources. But you're not alone anymore, Maya. Sky squeezed Maya's hand gently. We run a safe house. It's for situations exactly like this. My sister Rachel, Jake's sister actually, she's a licensed social worker. She runs Phoenix House. It's secure, comfortable, and you won't have to face tomorrow alone. Richard Lawson probably knows where you live, right? Maya nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. She'd been so focused on escaping, on surviving, that she hadn't thought about what came next. Her tiny studio apartment was in her employment file. Richard could send someone there, could have her things destroyed, we'll get your belongings, another rider said. His vest read Bones, and he looked younger than the others, maybe late 20s. Me and a couple guys. We'll go with a police escort. Get your stuff. Bring it to Phoenix House. You don't have to go back there. Ever. Why? Maya's voice cracked. Why are you all doing this? You don't know me. Jake crouched down to her level, his weathered face serious in the flashing lights of the police cars. You know what a phoenix is? Burns up in flames, then rises from the ashes, reborn and stronger. That's our symbol because that's all of us. Every single person in this club has a story. We've all been knocked down, burned, broken, some of us by people with power who thought they'd never face consequences. We ride together because we understand something most folks don't. Real strength isn't about dominating people. It's about lifting them up when they're down. He gestured to the other riders. Casey over there. She was assaulted by her supervisor at the hospital where she worked. Took 2 years to get justice because he was chief of surgery. Bones escaped a domestic violence situation that nearly killed him. Nobody believed a man could be a victim. Sky's ex tried to burn her house down with her inside it. Got away with it. For 3 years because he was a prosecutor. We all know what it's like to face someone powerful and feel like the system won't protect you. That's why we do this. That's why we're here. Sergeant Santos finished her preliminary report and called for a victim advocate to meet them at Phoenix House. Ms. Rodriguez, based on what you've told me and the evidence we've documented, I'm opening a criminal investigation into Richard Lawson. I'll be honest with you. He's going to hire expensive lawyers. They're going to try every trick in the book to discredit you, but you've got something on your side that a lot of victims don't have. You've got documentation, witnesses, and she glanced at the Phoenix Rising MC surrounding them. You've got people who won't let this get swept under the rug. As the Phoenix Rising MC formed a protective convoy around the police car that would take Maya to the safe house, she looked back at the stretch of highway where this nightmare chapter had begun. Just hours ago she'd been running blind, alone, certain that her life was over. Now she was surrounded by warriors, unlikely angels on motorcycles, who'd appeared exactly when she needed them most. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But for the first time since Richard Lawson's hand had grabbed her wrist, Maya Rodriguez felt something she hadn't dared to feel before. Hope. And in the days to come, Richard Lawson was going to learn a hard lesson. When you hurt someone under the protection of the Phoenix Rising MC, you don't just face one victim, you face an entire brotherhood, and they don't back down. If you believe that no abuser should go unpunished, write justice for the victims. Phoenix House wasn't what Maya expected. She'd imagined something institutional and cold. Instead, Jake's motorcycle pulled up to a beautiful southwestern-style home in Tempe, with warm lighting spilling from windows and a hand-painted sign near the door showing a phoenix rising from flames. Wind chimes made of colored glass caught the moonlight, creating tiny rainbows on the porch. Before Maya could even dismount from the police car, the front door opened and a woman appeared. She had Jake's strong features, softened by warmth and compassion, her dark hair streaked with silver that she wore in a long braid. This had to be Rachel. "I'm Rachel Hawkins," the woman confirmed, her voice gentle but strong. Jake called ahead. "Come inside, Maya. You're safe here. Completely safe." The interior of Phoenix House felt like walking into an embrace. Comfortable furniture with soft blankets, photos on the walls of smiling people, the smell of fresh coffee and something baking, cookies, Maya's exhausted brain supplied. A tabby cat immediately wound around her ankles, purring. It was so normal, so warm, that Maya felt something break inside her chest. All the walls she'd built to survive the day came crashing down at once. Rachel seemed to understand, without words being spoken. She guided Maya to a bathroom that was clean and bright, with fluffy towels and toiletries lined up neatly. "Take as long as you need. There's a robe on the hook and clean clothes in your size in the basket. We keep a variety here. When you're ready, there's food and a bed waiting. No pressure, no rush. You're in control here, Maya, always." Those last words, "you're in control," made Maya's eyes sting with tears. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in control of anything. The shower was heaven. Maya let the hot water wash away the blood, the dirt, the feeling of Richard Lawson's hands on her. She scrubbed until her skin was pink, until she could almost believe she was clean again. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a soft robe that smelled like lavender, Rachel was waiting with a first aid kit. "Let's take care of those feet," she said gently, leading Maya to the kitchen table where better light would help with the medical care. As Rachel cleaned and bandaged the cuts with expert hands, she talked quietly about Phoenix House. "We opened this place 4 years ago. Jake and I founded it after... Well, I had my own Richard Lawson 25 years ago. Mine was a husband, a lawyer, actually, respected in the community, charming at parties, and behind closed doors he was a monster." Rachel's hands were steady as she worked, her voice matter-of-fact. "Back then, I had nowhere to run. No one believed me when I finally got the courage to speak up. He was too important, too respected. I was just the quiet wife who everyone thought should be grateful to have such a successful husband. By the time I escaped, I'd lost everything. My confidence, my sense of self, almost my life. Jake was the only one who stood by me." Maya found her voice, rough from screaming and crying. "What happened to him? Your husband?" Rachel's smile was fierce and satisfied. "He's in prison, 15 to 25 years. Jake was still in uniform then, working patrol. He made absolutely certain. Every single piece of evidence was documented perfectly. He found other victims, helped them come forward. Turns out I wasn't the only one, just the first one brave enough to speak up with protection. But it took 3 years of fighting, Maya. 3 years of people not believing me, of his lawyers trying to intimidate me into silence. That's why we do this, so other women don't have to fight alone." Over warm chocolate chip cookies and herbal tea, Maya met 2 other residents of Phoenix House. Jen was 23, a nursing student who'd escaped an abusive boyfriend 8 months ago and was now finishing her clinicals while living at the house. And Teresa, a 58-year-old former teacher who'd finally left her husband of 30 years and was learning, as she said with determined brightness, that I'm not too old to have a life of my own. Their stories were different in details, but similar in pattern. Control, isolation, violence, and finally, the desperate decision to run. Maya realized she'd joined a sisterhood she'd never wanted to be part of, but desperately needed. Her phone, which the police had returned to her and Rachel had plugged into charge, buzzed incessantly. Together, they looked at it. 42 missed calls from the Lawson residence, 17 voicemails. The texts ranged from Amanda Lawson's shrill accusations to threatening messages from numbers Maya didn't recognize. Then there was one text that stood out, from a number she didn't know. "This is Detective Lisa Chang, Phoenix PD. We're moving forward with charges. Need your formal statement tomorrow at 10 a.m. Sergeant Santos will escort you. You're doing the right thing." And another, from a different unknown number. "This is Amanda Price, investigative reporter with the Arizona Republic. I've been investigating Richard Lawson for 6 months. 3 other women have contacted me. Would you be willing to talk?" Rachel read the messages over Maya's shoulder. Amanda's solid. She broke the story last year about the developer exploiting immigrant workers. Won awards for it. But it's completely your choice whether you talk to press, Maya. No one will pressure you either way. Maya thought about the housekeeper, Carmen, who'd called in sick today. Had she known? Had she been trying to protect herself? Maya thought about the way Richard had been so confident, so casual in his violence, like it was something he'd done before, like he knew he'd get away with it. She thought about the sirens, the way he'd immediately tried to flip the narrative and make her the criminal. "I'll talk to her," Maya said, her voice stronger than she'd expected. "If there are others, if this can stop him from ever doing this again, I'll talk to anyone who'll listen." Jen reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. "That's exactly what I said when I pressed charges. Scariest decision I ever made. Best decision too. My ex is in jail now, and 3 other girls came forward after they saw my story in the news. You're not just saving yourself, Maya, you're saving everyone he would have hurt next." That night, Maya slept in a room with sunshine-yellow walls and white curtains that fluttered in the desert breeze. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. She could hear people moving around the house, Rachel checking on the residents, Sky arriving with groceries, the sound of motorcycles outside as members of the Phoenix Rising MC took shifts keeping watch. They were protecting her. Complete strangers had become her shield, her support, her army. When she woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of friendly voices, Maya had a moment of disorientation before memory returned. Safe. She was safe. Detective Lisa Chang arrived at 9:30, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who carried herself with quiet authority. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm the lead detective on your case. I've reviewed the preliminary report, the photos, and—" She paused. "I've done some digging into Richard Lawson. You're not the first, but you are the first to file a formal police report. That's incredibly brave." Over the next 3 hours, Maya gave her complete statement, every detail she could remember. Detective Chang recorded everything, took notes, asked careful questions that helped Maya remember things she'd blocked out in her panic. Amanda Price, the journalist, arrived after lunch. She was younger than Maya expected, maybe early 30s, with intelligent eyes and a gentle manner that put people at ease. "I've been investigating Lawson for 6 months, Amanda explained, pulling out a notebook. "Started with a tip about labor violations, underpaying domestic workers, threatening them with deportation even when they had valid work visas. But then I started finding other things, other women. One took a settlement and signed an NDA. 2 were too terrified to speak publicly. You're the first one who's filed a police report. That changes everything." Amanda laid out what she'd learned. Richard Lawson had a pattern going back at least 7 years. Young women who worked in his home, housekeepers, personal assistants, a nanny for a brief period, before Amanda Lawson decided they didn't need one. Some quit suddenly. Others were fired for vague reasons. One had filed a workers' compensation claim for injuries that the insurance company had questioned but ultimately paid out. Nobody had connected the dots because the women were isolated, vulnerable, often immigrants who feared the system more than they trusted it, until now. "I want to run your story," Amanda said carefully, "but only if you're comfortable. It would be front page, probably get picked up nationally. You'd be named. I won't do anonymous sources on something this serious because it gives his lawyers too much ammunition. It would put you in the spotlight, Maya. You need to understand that." Maya looked around the kitchen at Rachel, at Detective Chang, at Jen and Teresa, who'd come to sit with her. She thought about the women who'd been silenced, who'd taken settlements and signed papers promising never to speak. She thought about the next woman Richard Lawson would hire. "I'll do it," Maya said. "I want my name on it. I want him to know that I'm not afraid anymore, that he can't make me disappear." Amanda's smile was fierce with approval. "Then we're going to make sure this story reaches everyone. And Maya, I think you're about to start something bigger than you realize. When powerful men finally face consequences, other victims find their courage. You're not just telling your story, you're opening a door for everyone else he's hurt." Over the next week, as Maya recovered at Phoenix House, a storm was building. Amanda's article hit the Arizona Republic's front page. Tech mogul Richard Lawson faces sexual assault allegations, pattern of abuse. Other outlets picked it up within hours. The Phoenix Rising MC made their presence known when Maya had to go to the police station for follow-up interviews. 30 motorcycles formed an escort that cameras couldn't ignore. The visual was powerful, a young woman being protected by a wall of leather and chrome, warriors who dedicated themselves to defending the vulnerable. Richard Lawson's lawyers tried everything. They issued statements calling the allegations baseless and motivated by financial gain. They tried to paint the Phoenix Rising MC as a gang intimidating witnesses. They dug into Maya's background looking for anything to discredit her. But they didn't count on Detective Chang's thoroughness, Amanda Price's relentless investigation, and the fact that when you shine a light into darkness, others start coming forward. 2 more women called Amanda within 48 hours of the article running. Both had worked for Richard Lawson. Both had similar stories. The house of cards was starting to collapse, and the man at the center was about to learn that money and influence don't always win. Not when the truth has an army behind it. The truth always finds a way to come out. Do you believe that too? Right, the truth wins. The Maricopa County Courthouse stood imposing in downtown Phoenix, all glass and steel reflecting the harsh Arizona sun. Maya stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps, her legs threatening to give out despite the support of Rachel on one side and Sky on the other. Behind her, 30 members of the Phoenix Rising MC waited in formation, their presence drawing news cameras like magnets. Today was the preliminary hearing for the criminal charges against Richard Lawson: sexual assault, false imprisonment, making false statements to law enforcement. Maya was about to face her attacker in court, and she'd never been more terrified in her life. Laura Kim, the attorney who'd agreed to represent Maya pro bono, was a force of nature wrapped in a sharp black suit. She'd spent the past week preparing Maya for this moment, the cross-examination, the attempts to destroy her credibility, the media circus. But nothing could truly prepare someone for the moment they'd have to sit in the same room as the person who'd tried to destroy them. Richard Lawson sat at the defense table, flanked by 4 lawyers who probably cost more per hour than Maya made in a month. When he looked at her, his expression was pure contempt, certain that his money would make this inconvenience disappear. He had no idea what was about to happen. Diana Torres, the prosecutor handling the case, was known for taking down powerful men who thought they were untouchable. She'd built her career on it, and she'd built her case carefully. The evidence was presented methodically. Photographs of Maya's injuries taken by paramedic Casey, time-stamped and documented with medical precision, the recording Jake Hawkins had made on the highway. Detective Chang's testimony about Maya's consistent statements and the physical evidence that corroborated her account. The medical reports. The timeline that proved Richard's version of events was impossible. Then came the bombshell. Diana called Amanda Lawson to the stand, Richard's wife. The courtroom went silent as the elegant woman walked to the witness stand. She wore a simple navy dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. No jewelry, no makeup. She looked smaller than in the society page photos, diminished, but there was steel in her spine that Maya recognized. The steel of someone who'd made a decision and wouldn't be shaken from it. Amanda Lawson raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. What she said next would rock the entire case. "Mrs. Lawson," Diana began gently, "can you tell the court what you witnessed on March 22nd of this year?" Amanda's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the witness stand. "I came home early from my spa appointment. I felt ill, needed to lie down. When I entered the house through the front door, I heard screaming. I ran toward the sound and..." Her voice broke. "I saw my husband attacking our housekeeper, Maya Rodriguez. She was trying to get away from him. Her uniform was torn. There was no question about what was happening. Tears streamed down her face. I froze. I didn't help her. I just stood there while she ran." The courtroom erupted. Richard's lawyers were on their feet shouting objections, but Judge Patricia Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s who'd spent 30 years on the bench, overruled them with a sharp crack of her gavel. "Continue, Mrs. Lawson." Amanda looked directly at Maya, her eyes filled with remorse and something else, determination. "After Maya ran, Richard called his lawyer first, not the police, his lawyer. I heard him crafting a story about theft. I heard him plan how to destroy her credibility. And I did nothing because I was a coward, but I'm not a coward anymore. I won't let another woman suffer because I'm afraid of losing my lifestyle." Judge Morrison called a recess. In the hallway, reporters swarmed like locusts, but the Phoenix Rising MC formed a protective wall around Maya. Jake's voice boomed out, "Ms. Rodriguez has no comment. Show some respect." The cameras pulled back. Amanda Price caught Maya's eye and gave a subtle nod. She'd be fair in her reporting, Maya knew. She'd become an ally in this fight. In a witness room, Laura Kim was practically vibrating with controlled excitement. His own wife testifying against him. Combined with everything else, this case just got a lot stronger. "They're going to offer a plea deal, I guarantee it." She was right. When the hearing resumed, Richard's lead attorney, Douglas Campbell, a silver-haired shark who charged $2,000 an hour, requested a sidebar with the judge. The whispered conversation was heated. Judge Morrison's expression grew increasingly stern. When they returned to their positions, Campbell's face was tight with barely controlled fury. "Your Honor, the defense requests a continuance to review new evidence that has come to light." Translation: they needed time to figure out how to counter Amanda Lawson's testimony and find a way to make this go away. Judge Morrison was having none of it. Motion denied. "Mr. Campbell, your client has had ample time to prepare his defense. Based on the evidence presented today, including eyewitness testimony from Mrs. Lawson, the medical evidence, and the documented pattern of behavior, I'm binding Mr. Lawson over for trial on all charges. Bail is set at $1 million with conditions: surrender of passport, no contact with the victim or any witnesses, electronic monitoring, and restriction to Maricopa County. If Mr. Lawson violates any of these conditions, bail will be revoked and he'll await trial in custody." Richard's face went purple with rage. He started to speak, but Campbell grabbed his arm, warning him to stay silent. They posted bail within the hour. $1 million was pocket change to someone like Richard Lawson. But as he walked out of the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Protesters held signs, "Believe survivors, justice for Maya, another predator exposed." News cameras captured every moment. Richard Lawson, who'd spent years cultivating a reputation as a philanthropist and tech innovator, was now publicly labeled an alleged sexual predator. His carefully constructed image was crumbling. The next 3 days brought a cascade of consequences that seemed to accelerate with each passing hour. Richard's company, Tech Vision Solutions, held an emergency board meeting. Maya watched the news coverage from Phoenix House, surrounded by Rachel, Sky, and the other residents. The board statement was carefully worded, but devastating. In light of serious allegations against CEO Richard Lawson, the board has voted to place him on immediate administrative leave, pending the outcome of legal proceedings. COO Jennifer Martinez will serve as interim CEO effective immediately. Amanda Price called with more news. Maya, you need to see this. I just got a call from the FBI. They're opening an investigation into potential labor trafficking violations at the Lawson household. Apparently, Detective Chang found evidence in her investigation. Payroll records showing systematic underpayment, threats made to workers about deportation, even though most had valid work visas. The housekeeper who quit last year, Carmen, she came forward after seeing your story. She had recordings of Richard threatening her, of him making inappropriate advances, of him telling her she'd be deported if she spoke up. The feds are taking this seriously. Federal charges. That changed everything. Labor trafficking carried penalties that made the state charges look minor. Prison time measured in decades, not years, fines in the millions, and federal prosecutors had resources that local DAs could only dream of. Richard Lawson had just graduated from local scandal to federal investigation, and his high-priced lawyers were about to earn every penny he was paying them. More importantly, every worker he'd ever exploited was about to get justice. Maya sat back, overwhelmed by the speed at which things were moving. "How did this happen?" she asked Rachel that night. They sat on the back porch of Phoenix House, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "How did we go from me running down a highway to the FBI investigating him?" Rachel smiled, wise and warm. "Because you spoke up. And when you spoke up, you gave other people permission to speak up too. That's how these things work, Maya. Predators rely on silence, on victims thinking they're alone, that no one will believe them. But when one person breaks that silence, especially with the kind of support you had, it creates a ripple effect. Carmen saw your courage and found her own. Those other women saw you weren't backing down and decided they wouldn't either." The following week, Maya met the lawyer handling the federal case, a serious woman named Catherine Reynolds, who was known as the Hammer in legal circles. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Ms. Rodriguez, the evidence we've gathered in 1 week is substantial. We have financial records showing systematic wage theft. We have testimony from 8 women who worked in the Lawson household over the past 7 years. We have recordings, text messages, emails. We have Mrs. Lawson's testimony about her husband's pattern of behavior. And we have your case, which is the cornerstone that holds everything together." Catherine leaned forward, her expression intense. "Here's what's going to happen. Richard Lawson is going to trial on both state and federal charges. The state charges will probably go first. Sexual assault, false imprisonment. If convicted, he's looking at 10 to 15 years. But the federal charges, labor trafficking, conspiracy, intimidation of witnesses, that's 25 to life. And Maya, I don't lose cases like this. Ever. Your willingness to stand up, to put your name on the record, to face him in court, you've given us something most victims can't. You've given us an unshakable foundation." 3 months later, Maya sat in the courtroom for the start of Richard Lawson's state trial. She'd spent those months preparing, therapy sessions to process her trauma, meetings with lawyers to go over testimony, media training, because Amanda's article had made her a public figure whether she wanted to be or not. The Phoenix. Rising MC had become her extended family. Jake taught her to ride a motorcycle. "Knowing how to control something powerful is good for the soul," he'd said. Sky helped her enroll in community college courses. Rachel gave her a part-time job at Phoenix House, helping other survivors navigate the system that had once seemed so overwhelming. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence. Maya testified for 6 hours, facing cross-examination from Douglas Campbell, who tried every trick to discredit her. But she stood firm, her voice steady, the truth on her side. Carmen testified via video link from Mexico, where she'd relocated with her family. 3 other former employees testified. Amanda Lawson testified again, this time with even more details about the pattern of abuse she'd witnessed and ignored. Medical experts testified. Police officers testified. The Phoenix Rising MC members who'd found Maya testified about her condition that night. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Maya stood in the courtroom, holding Rachel's hand on one side and Laura Kim's on the other, as the foreman read the verdict. On the charge of sexual assault in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of false imprisonment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of making false statements to law enforcement, we find the defendant guilty. Richard Lawson's face went ashen. His lawyers immediately filed for appeal, but Judge Morrison was already speaking. Sentencing is set for 6 weeks from today. Until then, Mr. Lawson will be remanded to custody. Bail is revoked. Richard Lawson, who'd walked into that courtroom in a $1,000 suit expecting his money to save him, was led out in handcuffs. The courtroom erupted in applause until Judge Morrison's gavel restored order. Outside, Maya faced a wall of cameras, but this time she was ready. I want every woman who's been assaulted, who's been silenced, who's been told they won't be believed. I want you to know that justice is possible. It's not easy, it's not fast, but it's possible, and you don't have to face it alone. Behind her, 30 motorcycles revved their engines in solidarity. The Phoenix had risen, and she'd brought others with her. If Maya's journey has moved you so far, comment "reborn from the ashes" and tell me what the most powerful part has been for you so far. 1 year after the night Maya ran down Route 66, she stood on the steps of the Arizona State Capitol building, facing a crowd of over 700 people. The lawn was packed with survivors, activists, legislators, and members of the Phoenix Rising MC who'd arrived in a formation so large it had taken 15 minutes for all the bikes to park. Television cameras from every major network lined the plaza. This wasn't just a local story anymore. This was national news. Maya Rodriguez, the housekeeper who'd escaped, had become a symbol of something larger, a movement that said enough was enough. The past year had been a whirlwind. After Richard's conviction on state charges, the federal trial had followed. Catherine Reynolds had been right. She didn't lose. Richard Lawson was convicted on all federal counts: labor trafficking, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and civil rights violations. At sentencing, Judge Morrison had given him the maximum on state charges, 15 years. The federal judge had added 30 years. Richard Lawson, 52 years old, would likely die in prison. His company had been forced to pay millions in restitution to former employees. His assets had been frozen and seized to cover the judgments. His name had been scrubbed from buildings and programs he'd funded. He'd become a cautionary tale. But Maya wasn't here today to talk about Richard Lawson. She was here to talk about change. "My name is Maya Rodriguez," she began, her voice amplified across the plaza. "A year ago, I was running for my life down a dark highway. I thought I was alone. I thought no one would believe me. I thought a powerful man would use his money and influence to destroy me. I was wrong. I wasn't alone. People believed me, and that powerful man is in prison." The crowd erupted in cheers. Maya waited for silence before continuing. "But here's the truth. I got lucky. I ran into exactly the right people at exactly the right time. The Phoenix Rising MC stopped to help. They had connections in law enforcement. They had resources. They had the courage to stand up to someone powerful. Not every survivor gets that lucky. Most survivors face this battle alone, without support, without resources, against systems that weren't designed to protect them. That's why we're here today, to change those systems. She gestured to the banner behind her where state legislators stood in support. The Survivor Protection Act. Representative Sarah Johnson stepped forward, a fierce advocate who championed the bill. The Survivor Protection Act is the most comprehensive domestic worker protection legislation in the country. It mandates reporting requirements for labor violations, establishes a statewide network of safe houses, creates a fund to support survivors pursuing legal action, and provides protection against retaliation for workers who report abuse. This bill was inspired by Maya's courage and the work of organizations like Phoenix Rising MC and Phoenix House, and I'm proud to announce that it passed both chambers with overwhelming bipartisan support. Governor Martinez has committed to signing it into law next week. The celebration that followed was joyful and bittersweet. Joyful because they'd won something tangible, something that would protect future victims. Bittersweet because everyone present knew how many people had suffered before this law existed. At Phoenix House that evening, the living room that had been Maya's sanctuary was filled with people whose lives had intersected because of one terrible night and the community that formed around it. Amanda Lawson was there. She'd divorced Richard, donated half her settlement to domestic violence organizations, and had become an advocate herself. Carmen had flown in from Mexico, her face glowing with pride. The other survivors who testified against Richard had formed their own support network, meeting weekly and speaking at events across the state. Rachel announced something that made Maya's breath catch. "We're expanding Phoenix House. Thanks to donations that flooded in after Maya's story went public, we're opening 3 more safe houses across Arizona. And," she looked at Maya with pride, "we're hiring our first full-time survivor advocate. Someone who understands the system because she's been through it. Someone who has the courage and compassion to help other women find their way through the darkness." She opened a door to reveal an office, desk, computer, filing cabinets, and a nameplate that read, "Maya Rodriguez, Survivor Advocate." Maya's hands flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "It's yours if you want it," Rachel said softly. "Full-time position with benefits, funded by a grant we received specifically because of the work you've already been doing. You've been helping other survivors navigate the system for months now, Maya. This just makes it official. You'd be the face of Phoenix House, the person other women see and think, she survived, she made it through. I can too." Maya touched the nameplate, her fingers tracing the letters. She thought about the woman who'd scrubbed floors in a mansion, invisible and powerless. She thought about the terrified woman running down a dark highway. She thought about every moment of the past year, the fear, the fight, the slow building of something stronger than she'd ever been before. "I never imagined this," she whispered. "When I was running that night, I just wanted to survive, to see another sunrise. I never thought I could be this, could do this. That's the thing about Phoenixes," Jake said from the doorway, his weathered face creased with pride. "They don't know they're going to rise when they're burning. They just know they have to keep fighting. The rising comes after. You've risen, Maya. Now you get to help others do the same." Her first client as official advocate came 2 days later. Sophia was 18, fresh out of high school, who'd been working as a nanny for a wealthy family in Scottsdale when the father assaulted her. She sat in Phoenix House's living room, trembling, her story spilling out in fragments that sounded hauntingly familiar. Maya sat across from her, holding her hands, and said the words she'd needed to hear a year ago. "You're safe now. You're not alone. And we're going to make sure he faces consequences." Sophia's eyes widened. "But he's important. He knows people." He said, "I know what he said," Maya interrupted gently. "He said no one would believe you. He said you'd be deported, even though you're a citizen. Right? He said your life would be ruined if you spoke up." Sophia nodded, shocked. How did you? Because they all say the same things. They count on us believing them. But here's what he doesn't know. You have us now, and we don't back down. Over the next year, Maya helped 37 women navigate the aftermath of abuse. Some cases led to criminal charges and convictions. Others ended with restraining orders and new beginnings. A few women simply needed someone to believe them, to document their experiences, to stand beside them as they rebuilt their lives from the ashes of trauma. Each one left Phoenix House stronger than when they arrived, carrying with them the knowledge that survival was not only possible, but could be powerful. Maya kept a board in her office with photos of survivors who'd moved on, graduating college, opening businesses, smiling with their children, living lives they'd once thought impossible. The Phoenix Rising MC expanded their operations far beyond what Jake and Rachel had initially imagined. Inspired by the attention Maya's case had brought, they opened 6 more safe houses across Arizona and New Mexico. They started a program training other motorcycle clubs nationwide in how to identify and help trafficking and abuse victims. They partnered with police departments to provide trauma-informed response training. Hawk's gruff exterior hid a fierce joy in this work. This was what he'd joined the police force to do all those years ago, and now he could do it without the bureaucracy that had sometimes tied his hands. He'd found his purpose in the middle of his life, and it had saved him as much as it saved the people they helped. On the 2-year anniversary of the night Maya ran from the Lawson estate, the Phoenix Rising MC organized a memorial ride called the Survivors Run. Over 300 bikers from clubs across the Southwest joined them, riding in formation from Paradise Valley to the state capital. At the end of the route, they unveiled a sculpture at Phoenix House, a bronze phoenix rising from flames, with plaques bearing the names of survivors who'd found safety there. The inscription read, "In honor of every survivor who found the courage to run, the community that taught them to rise, and the warriors who protect them, you are not alone." Amanda Price, who'd won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series on labor abuse and sexual assault in wealthy households, interviewed Maya for a follow-up documentary. "Do you ever think about that night?" Amanda asked, cameras rolling, "about what would have happened if the Phoenix Rising MC hadn't been on that highway?" Maya considered the question carefully. "I used to think it was random luck. Right place, right time. But I don't anymore. I think there are people like Jake and Rachel and the whole Phoenix Rising family in every community, waiting for the moment they're needed. They just don't always look like we expect angels to look. Sometimes they wear leather and ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're retired cops with tattoos. Sometimes they're survivors who turned their pain into purpose." 3 years after that night, Maya stood in a courtroom again, but this time as an expert witness in a case against another wealthy employer. 5 years later, she was invited to speak at a national conference on domestic violence prevention, sharing a stage with senators and advocates whose work she'd once only read about. 7 years later, she was training law enforcement officers across the country in trauma-informed response to abuse victims. The terrified woman running down a highway had become a national advocate, a voice for the voiceless, a living testament to the fact that survival was only the beginning of the story. But the moment Maya treasured most came on an ordinary Wednesday evening at Phoenix House. She was in her office, reviewing case files, when she heard Rachel greeting someone at the front door. A woman's voice, scared and uncertain. Maya walked into the living room and saw her, another survivor, another woman who'd found the courage to run. Their eyes met, and Maya saw herself in this stranger's face. The fear, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found safety at last. "Hi," Maya said gently, sitting down and taking the woman's hands. "My name is Maya. You're safe here. Whatever you've been through, whatever comes next, you're not alone anymore." She gestured to Rachel, to Sky, who'd just arrived for her evening shift, to the sounds of motorcycles pulling up outside as the Phoenix Rising MC came for their weekly security check. This is your family now. We protect our own, and we're going to help you through this, one day at a time." The woman began to cry, the same tears Maya had cried 3 years ago, tears of someone who'd been holding on by a thread and finally found solid ground. As Maya sat with her, offering comfort and strength, she understood something profound. The phoenix doesn't rise just once. It rises every day, every time someone chooses courage over fear, every time someone speaks truth to power, every time someone extends a hand to lift another person out of the ashes. Outside, the Arizona sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like flames, beautiful, fierce, transformative. Through the window, Maya could see the Phoenix Rising MC's bikes lined up, their riders standing together in brotherhood and purpose. Jake caught her eye, through the glass, and nodded, a gesture of recognition and pride. She nodded back, then turned her full attention to the woman who needed her now. This was her purpose. This was her power. From victim to survivor, to warrior, to healer, Maya Rodriguez had risen from the ashes, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure that every woman who needed to do the same had the support, the resources, and the fierce protection of people who understood that real strength wasn't about dominating others. It was about lifting them up, standing with them, refusing to let them face their battles alone. The Phoenix had risen, and she was bringing an entire army with her, one survivor at a time. Because that night on Route 66, when 30 motorcycles surrounded a terrified woman on a dark highway, something extraordinary had begun. Not just Maya's journey from victim to advocate, but a movement that proved that when good people refuse to look away, when communities rally around survivors, when justice finally catches up to predators, everything changes. The story that started with blood on asphalt and fear in the darkness had transformed into something beautiful: hope, justice, and the unshakable truth that no one, no matter how powerful, no matter how wealthy, is above accountability when survivors find their voice and their army. Thought it was over? I've prepared an incredible story. It's right here on the screen. Check it out and be moved.